This episode of the Disruption Lab is taped in front of a live studio audience. In case you were wondering, they've given you evidence now. They are in fact all here.
Proof of life.
Fantastic. Melissa?
Yes.
You've built tech platforms, led ecosystem development, and now you oversee one of the Midwest's premier entrepreneurial fellowships. What was the moment where you realized that this regional entrepreneurial calling was your future?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think it was when I initially got the call from a recruiter about pipeline. So for those of you who don't know, I actually live in Oklahoma, which is a long commute to Kansas. It's a 5-hour drive, if you're wondering. And I had never heard of pipeline. And as an entrepreneur in the Midwest in Oklahoma, when I just remember the recruiter calling, telling me about this organization called Pipeline and thinking, is that oil and gas? I mean, I'm in Oklahoma, valid question. And then I pulled up the website and it was about serial entrepreneurs. And I think a lot of our pipeline fellows feel like this when they first step into pipeline, but it was like, oh my gosh, these are my people. I knew just from looking at the website that this was where I was supposed to be. And so from that very moment of, wow, I wish we had this resource here and we don't, all the way through to now where we are, which is being a part of an ecosystem for 5.5 years, seeing it grow, seeing it build, meeting the incredible entrepreneurs, collaborators that we have. It was really that very first moment where I was like, ooh, what is that? You could just feel the energy, and that has only taken off and grown since then.
So one of the things you've been focused on in Pipeline is really, trying to grow the support for women and diverse founders. And I guess my question is, what cultural shifts have you seen in the Midwest, since the Pipeline network really kind of covers a good portion of the Midwest at this point in time? What cultural shifts have you seen since you started in Pipeline in the Midwest? And then, have those things been accelerated, or any of those shifts been accelerated by the work that you've been doing with Pathfinder?
I certainly hope so. I hope they have been accelerated. That certainly was the goal. I was just saying this earlier to Dick Flanagan, who's here, about, when Pipeline was started in 2007, and Pipeline serves high growth serial entrepreneurs, the people who were starting those type of companies were white males. And so it's not, unrealistic to think that when I started in 2020, that you were going to see a lack of diversity. The problem is if you don't change that, it's going to continue that way. And so, Pipeline was seen as this very premier, and still is, very premier organization. And it's a very large organization. It's one of the few organizations that's been around for that long. And so I remember when we were recognizing that in recruiting, there was this issue around the applicants that we were getting. We had very diverse founders who were applying, but they were earlier. So they were earlier in their company life cycle, and they weren't full-time on their startups, which makes complete sense, because if you don't have access to resources, you are earlier. You're not able to get to that place where you're full-time. And so for us, it was like, man, if Pipeline, as this organization that had been seen as not willing to evolve and change, could make that shift, then there was no excuse for anyone else not to make that shift. And so what we had to first do was realize, were we trying to fill a gap that we didn't need to fill? Was there really a need? And if there was, were we the right organization to fill it? And so we worked with Dan Smith, with Porterhouse KC, and Kara Cherie Cobb with Entrepreneurial Business Basics, and we just did an evaluation of what are the programs that are out there. And there was some really great programs that they were running that were for brick and mortar companies, but there wasn't anything for this high-tech, scaling, growing startup. And so that was what caused us to create Pathfinder. And so over the last 3 years, we have seen this amazing response to Pathfinder, where there is this beautiful diversity that lives in Pipeline now. And not just with that program, but as you have founders going through the program, our members are now volunteering to be mentors for the it's this own little ecosystem of its own, and it is this beautiful little safe haven, if you will, of what the Midwest could be, And I don't think that we're there yet. I think that there is still this, sadly, like there is fractions of the state and the Midwest that have evolved, and there are some that haven't. But I feel like what you can do is be a representation of what's possible and the beauty and the power of that. And I hope that's what we've represented. And again, I feel like because Pipeline has made that shift, if we've made it, then there really isn't any reason for any other organization to say, well, we can't make that shift.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's funny to hear you say that in 2020 or, previously in Pipeline, starting a tech company was kind of a white male dominated ecosystem because you were a tech founder before this. And in fact, a tech founder in a very male dominated tech and sports ecosystem. So I'm curious, what mindset did you keep private as you were in that ecosystem as a tech founder in the sports world?
It's a great question. As my friend, you know the answer to this. It was very difficult. And, I did not see myself reflected there. I have a son who's biracial. I did not see my son reflected. And when it comes to what motivates you to drive change, not seeing your entire family unit not be reflected in the organization that you're serving or in the culture that you're living in was something that I was like, well, come hell or high water, I'm going to do whatever I can to change that. Because it was very difficult. When you're raising capital and, you're not perceived as the expert, even though if there's a man in the room, it was automatically assumed that I was an assistant or that I was just the side, like, oh, she just must be sales or whatever. It couldn't possibly be that I was the CEO. And so that lack of, ability to see a female founder as a CEO and in those spaces is something that still fires me up. It's still, we still see it. We see it in women's sports. We see it in everything. There's still inequality. And so there's always a reason and a motivation and a fire to continue to try to change things. But I know, and obviously I was coming from a place of privilege and it was incredibly difficult. And so that's what really fires me up to make sure that even if it's a fraction better, a percentage better, it's still better than where it was. And then you just keep pushing from there.
Yeah, I think these shifts have to be, when I first got the opportunity to lead a product design organization, and I'm not a PhD in design or anything, I was quickly schooled in making radical shifts in paradigms for consumers is not the path. You have to make these incremental shifts to get people to truly accept product adoption, some of those types of things. I think cultural shifts in ecosystems I've learned are very similar. Like trying to make radical shifts, trying to break systems is extremely difficult versus making these smaller, more incremental kind of steps forward. It's been, I think, I wouldn't say maybe mischaracterizing it and using a word that I shouldn't hear, but it's been fun to watch the incremental shift of Pipeline from the outside, having been involved with Pipeline for so long. So it's fun to watch you do that. And I know it comes from a lived experience perspective. So let's talk about that. 9 Tribe. Tell me what that was. Tell me what you were doing there.
So I had a software development company. And what's interesting is I think it sounds random, why did she have a software development company? And the reason why I did was because I had been part of a startup. I was a partner in a startup, and we had development teams in 3 different countries, and we had a CTO who transparently was building his own product rather than actually building the product that we were selling. And I was the only female in that group. And there was a certain point where I got so frustrated from my voice not being heard that I was like, surely I can do this better on my own. And I had connections and relationships that I had built. And so I was like, well, man, this is not pleasant. I remember our CTO saying to me at one point, well, you're a woman, what would you know? And just being like, why am I still here? Why am I still doing this? Surely I could do better if I just went out on my own. And so I did. And And that experience, I look back about that company and then the subsequent company in sports, and I think to myself, if I had had pipeline then, how much better I could have built those companies. If I just had community, if I just had people to say, ooh, why are you doing that? Ooh, that's not the right business model. Like what our fellows and our pathfinders and our members get, there wasn't in Oklahoma. And if I'd had that, and it's one of the reasons I love pipeline, because I, from lived experience, could look at it and say, if I'd had access to that, where could I have gone? What could my trajectory have been? And you also want to help people not make the same mistakes. And so in starting that company, I had, and I'm looking at Craig because we talk about co-founder issues in the modules, I had a co-founder who embezzled money. And I was blown away by it. And now looking back, not that all co-founders embezzle money, but having a co-founder is like being in a marriage. And a lot of the time it doesn't work out. And so going through those experiences and not having a network like Pipeline to be able to call when you're having those moments and be like, goodness, like, I can't believe this happened. How did this happen? And you doubt yourself, especially when you're, a female founder who's been doubted all along. You have one mistake like that where you trusted the wrong person and you're like, oh, it's me. You're not saying like, well, clearly anyone would have, fallen for what happened. You doubt yourself. And so then you have to go through the whole process of on your own trying to overcome that. Whereas with Pipeline, there's this beautiful community, and I hope it starts with me where I'm able to be transparent and say, oh my gosh, I've been there. Like, it's okay. You feel like it might be you. It's not. Like, these things happen. We're here to get you through it. That's the power of being a founder and then also then leading an organization like Pipeline.
I've been on this soapbox lately that we talk about access to capital, we talk about access to talent, we talk about access to resources. I think the most valuable access that we can give entrepreneurs is fellowship. Mm-hmm. And we underemphasize or we don't place enough importance on being able to lean over and ask those questions or being able to pick up the phone when you're in that moment, because that moment hits all of us. And we all talk about how lonely entrepreneurship is. Well, not when you have fellowship.
No.
Not when you have this network of folks that have been through, and you can pick based on what experience they've had, the right person for the right moment.
Yep.
So
that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, that's incredible. So from 9 Tribe to Locked In Sports.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Tell that story.
Yeah, so Locked In Sports was my baby. So understanding that I have a son who, as I mentioned, is biracial. He's also adopted. And when I looked at him, and at that time I was married and he had stepbrothers, and they were playing sports and we had personal trainers for them and we were doing all these things. And I looked and I thought, man, if I wasn't his mom, and I looked at his half siblings, I'm like, they don't have access, not because of lack of talent, but it's lack of financial resources to be able to get to have a trainer. It is lack of being able to drive to a location where there is actually like legitimate trainers. It's being in a school district that has incredible coaches versus not. And for me, everything is this like uneven playing field. And I know it sounds like it's silly, but I was like, well, how do you even that playing field? How do you create access in sports? And so you have technology. And so one of the things that we looked at was, okay, if you were isolated, if you're in rural, or if you don't have access to a trainer, how do you get access to that? And so we created a platform where it was sport specific and position specific. So if I had the app, I would take a self-assessment based on my position in my sport, and it would then create a workout for me to improve. And so as I completed the workouts and I improved on my results, it would change the workout. So I could never have access to a coach or a trainer and improve. And to me, that was this opportunity to say, okay, like here's elite training. And so we worked with professional athletes to create the training so that it was actually elite. And the goal was, let's always make it free for the student and the athlete to be able to use it. And then we had a coach platform that integrated with it. And so it was an incredible opportunity. It brought me into conversations and connections that have now benefited Pipeline to this day, but it was a game changer for me to have that experience.
So between those two, Nine Tribe, I think you had the experience that I think a lot of founders, I'll say dread, in that you had to replace yourself as CEO, right? What was the feeling? I mean, was it because you were moving so quickly to Locked In Sports, that was your baby, that was where you wanted to go, so it was an easier decision and an easier path for you to do that? Or was it still hard to do and hard to think about and process?
That's a great question. Locked In was so exciting to me, and this opportunity that I felt like really reflected my heart of being able to be a parent and want to create this access and having these opportunities to create, working with professional athletes to, do these drills. There's all these layers to it. And it was really fun to build it. When you have a software development company, you're building other people's products. And so this was my first opportunity to build my own product and look at, what's the user experience? What flow do they need to do next? And being so just building it and having your fingerprints all over it, I absolutely love that. And so for me, that was this exciting piece of, I can see where this can go and having that vision for it. Whereas the software development company was helping other people take their visions and make those reality. So it was very easy once I got started to want to, and then transition over to.
You were ready to go.
Oh, I was ready.
I was ready to go.
Yeah.
Can't find this
And I
person
love
soon
sports,
enough. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I love sports. It was everything. I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this for a living? What? It was incredible.
So between those two experiences, that I assume that taught you a lot, or you developed a better understanding for product market fit, for athlete psychology, for client engagement, and so on. How have those things influenced what you look for in founders in the Pipeline Network?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think the thing
I'm on a roll. If you haven't noticed, I've said a lot of great. I just want to duly noted. Somebody put that.
There's a reason you have a podcast. I think for me, where it comes into play is having the experience to have to question those things, because there were so many things that we did wrong. Like, for example, I was just telling someone this last week. I was like, when you think about having you're creating an app for athletes that's sport specific and position specific, you're practicing by yourself most of the time. And we started with football because we had NFL players that were going to film the stuff. You can't, you need another person in football to practice. I mean, there were things that seemed so obvious now, but we were going off of where we had the connections. And I was like, why didn't we start in basketball or soccer, somewhere you can practice on your own? And also the other piece that we realized was that's such an expensive sport. If we're trying to, create an even playing field with sports, football is such an expensive sport, even to practice on your own if you're really trying to practice. So there were so many pieces of the puzzle that I hope help me now when someone, and I get a lot of phone calls from our pathfinders and our fellows and even our members being like, oh, I'm struggling with this. And it's so easy for me to put myself back in that spot and be like, okay, what did I need to hear? Because sometimes you just need to vent. And then the next part is, man, I wish I had had a mentor. I wish I had had a connection that could have said, are you serious? Why are you starting with football? You realize that makes no sense. And I didn't have that. And
Mark wasn't around to give you that advice at the time. Yeah.
If I'm a wide receiver, who's going to throw me the ball?
Right.
And so, great if you're a running back. So I look back at that and I think to myself, gosh, I wish that I had had that, but it's also those pieces that help you be like, there is such a thing as tough love. And I always say, speak the truth in love, but you have to speak the truth. If someone had said that to me, I would have listened. I was open. It's just that for whatever reason, no one was like, seriously, football? It made no sense. But at the time, it was where we had the connection.
Yeah. So Pipeline is, I think, well known for being, influencing founder success. I think that's been something that's been established over the, 15, 16 years that the organization's been around. I think it's 15 or 16 years now, isn't it?
Since 2007.
Yeah.
I know.
All right. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. What's the one structure or ritual that you think has influenced, or from the program that's really radically kind of influenced the founder success?
I will say this, it is, and anyone who's gone through the program, except for the virtual years, knows this. On the very first night of the very first module, I take all the fellows out to dinner. And It's very strategic because the thing that makes pipeline special is the ability to put your wall down. And that has to start from the very first moment that we start. If you can put your wall down, then you can actually share what you're struggling with. If you can't, we can't help you. And I always say that. It's like the same thing I say to my son. Like, if I don't know what's going on, I can't help you. And so the only way to really do that is to create that opportunity from day one for them to feel like there is a safe space, and that has to start with me. So if I can put my wall down on day one and share things that I've gone through and ask strategic questions that help them start to realize it is a safe space, and that sometimes even means pushing back when someone I can tell is fronting that they have it together, it's my job to be like, let's dig into that a little bit more. Because until everyone can put their guard down and actually have that authentic experience where they're sharing with each other the good and the bad, it takes away from that community aspect and that fellowship aspect that is what makes Pipeline so special. And so that has kind of been, when I very first started, I didn't, you don't know what you don't know. I knew that there was this incredible community, and then you just kind of start to put little pieces together of like, well, how do I get after that? Like, I want them to be vulnerable with each other, but how do I make that happen? And when does that start? And do they have to see each other first? And it's like, it has to start before they even sit down with each other in module 1. It's the night before. We're bringing it down. And I always share stuff that I've experienced, whether it's the embezzlement with my co-founder or whatever it is, because if I'm willing to share that, then you can see everyone be like, oh, okay, well, I've gone through some things. And you start to see those walls come down. Yeah. And that is what makes it's the critical piece of the puzzle. And before that even happens, when we're in the application cycle, and you know this because you're amazing and you have been a judge for many years, for all the years that I've been here for us, for applications, you know the deliberation that we have. And that question of, even if this person has more revenue, if they're not coachable, then this person over here is coachable but doesn't have the revenue. I will 1,000,000% always vote for this person over here. Right. It is that coachability, because you can have revenue, but when a mistake or something happens, which inevitably it will, you're either going to, you're not going to dig into it the way that someone who's coachable is, and we can't help if we don't know. And so 1,000,000% that coachability, that authenticity, that vulnerability is 100% what Pipeline's about.
Have you run into those encounters or experiences where you've had to work on that wall? It's not happened in that first night, and you've had to continue to kind of chip away at that wall with a founder?
Yes, and I think the nice thing being 5.5 years in now is that at first it was very uncomfortable because I didn't know that was the secret sauce the way that I do now. And so it was like, well, I don't want to upset anyone. These people are new to the organization. I don't want to go in there and be like, all right, tell me the real story. But over time, you get to very much realize when someone has a wall up and when they don't. You get to realize when someone's like, oh, no, I've got it all together. And in the past, I would have not realized the importance of pushing back on that. And now, 5.5 years in, I will, in that first dinner, literally say, that sounds really lovely, but we know that's not accurate. And just start right there, because if you don't, as soon as someone can continue in that mindset of, I have it all together, after everyone else is sharing that they don't, you have completely shut down the opportunity for that cohort to bond, because now they're like, oh, well, that person has it all together. I shouldn't share what I'm struggling with. So you have to break that down immediately, because I don't know a single entrepreneur that's been successful that has not struggled in major ways. And so whenever someone's like, no, I've got it together, I'm like, okay, but we all know that you don't. So let's be honest.
Yeah, today. Let's talk about the day you do.
Let's be honest with each other about it, because then we can actually come together and actually help. And so that's probably been like the most fun, is to be able to read the room now and have the comfort and realizing like that pushback, while it's uncomfortable in the moment, is so valuable for that cohort to come together, because one person not being willing to do that can shut down an entire cohort.
How's that experience, has that experience, and if so, how has that experience been different with Pathfinder?
So with Pathfinder, what you're trying to do, so with the fellows, because they've had success by the time they're getting into the fellowship, everyone's doing a little bit of like an ego check with each other. Like, you know, it's like, oh, I got this going on. And you're trying to like let everyone have that moment, but then dig deeper. But with Pathfinder, it's the complete opposite. It's like, should I even be here? There is a confidence factor that instead of being like, what you're trying to do there is help everyone feel safe. What you're trying to do with the fellows is help them be willing to be transparent and vulnerable.
So with Pathfinder, what has been, I mean, Pipeline's reputation prior to Pathfinder was very much around impact, right? Founder impact, founder success, some of those types of things. What in your experience or in your opinion has been the playbook to maintain impact while increasing access?
It's a great question. Again, it is. So the thing about, and I hate the word underserved or underrepresented, and I have to give Don Carter credit for this because he said it and I've stuck with it since because it's true. It's untapped. There's no underserved or underrepresented anything. It's not under anything. It's untapped. There is potential there that has not yet been accessed because of lack of access to resources and everything else. And so when I look at the Pathfinders that have gone through our program, it's incredible. We've had 2 exits, and the first year was us putting it together. In 3 years, we've had 2 Pathfinders exit their companies from Pathfinder to exit. That's incredible. To go from not even being full-time in your startup within 2 years to exiting your company, so the impact numbers are incredible. And it is, to me, such an example of the fact that it is untapped entrepreneurs. If you give access to resources and mentorship and programming that helps you not make some of the mistakes and be able to level up by not making some of the mistakes that other people are making, oh my gosh, you're just taking the cap off of that potential. And that's the part that I feel like, so that question to answer it is, we're just untapping that potential. The power of that is only going to continue to be incredible. And it's been exciting to see it. And I had a lunch meeting today where I was sharing that. I was like, we've already had 2 Pathfinders exit. I mean, that's incredible data and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And on the same side, you're also going to have people, because they're serial entrepreneurs, that are going to figure out, oh, maybe this isn't the right company. Just like in the fellowship, that's completely okay. Most people are going to figure it out. If we can help them figure that answer out faster, especially because we're working with serial entrepreneurs, I'm helping you figure out, oh, this isn't the right company. I need to pivot. This isn't the right company. I need to do something different. If we can help you do that faster, oh my gosh, the impact is incredible.
I'm curious, cohort to cohort, all things equal, since Pathfinder has started, exits in the fellowship versus exits in Pathfinder? Same cohort, same class.
Yeah. That's a great question. There have actually been more Pathfinder exits than there have been
That's why I asked the
fellows.
question.
That is accurate.
It's interesting.
It's pretty close. I mean, I have to think about that one more time, though.
I mean,
it might be even.
Even if it's even, right?
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
very
point,
close,
right? That's
but it is the whole,
that's
yes,
the point.
that is the point.
So coming from a technology background or having the experience of being a tech founder, and now you're in community development,
Yep.
ecosystem development, community development. What role has technology played in connecting the members or in developing the fellowship across states, like across the distance of Pathfinder?
You know what's funny is I
Or
don't think it's
pipelines.
I don't know that it's technology. I think it is literally the fellowship. It is the sitting down in person because you have to remember when I first started, the pandemic hit, and so we had one module and then it went virtual, and then we were virtual for that full year and almost the full next year. The difference in the closeness of the cohorts from in-person versus virtual is pretty dramatic. And I always am like, oh, I'm sorry, you were a virtual year. Because it's such a different experience when you go through it that way. And so if it were technology, I'd be like, well, we were still able to do it. We just did it via Zoom. It's not technology, it's heart. It's 100% the heart of the community and the heart of the cohorts. When you put these, like this year we have 14 people for the first time because there were so many great applicants we couldn't say no. The heart, like I say this all the time, we create a text string to make it easier with the fellows, to make it easier for us to communicate at modules. We're still on there, and I just stay really quiet because I don't want them to remember that I'm on there. But the support that they show each other, which has nothing to do with us, we just set it in motion in the very beginning. I mean, they are like celebrating each other's wins. When they're struggling, they're like, hey, how can I help? What can I do? Let's get to, I mean, it's incredible. And it gives me so much joy and purpose just to see their text strings. And it's the same with the Pathfinders. Like the community, and yes, the technology allows them to text and stuff, but it's all the heart. It's 100% the heart, and them recognizing when they step into pipeline, oh, wow, I really can be myself. I really can admit when I'm struggling. And despite what you would expect from high growth entrepreneurs, it's not competitive. It is 100% how do we come together and support each other? And that's all heart.
So have you trialed any digital approaches, cohort matching, virtual mentorship, any of those types of things? Do you see how emerging technologies, ways that they might improve founder outcomes, either within the fellowship or even by introducing some of those things into the founders?
Well, it should be a conversation that we have. We should do that. But right now, like when we match with our mentors, I do that. Like I will pull and because I've given you calls and I'll be like, hey, we have this specific fellow that really needs this and you're the perfect person for that. Like it's very intentional. That doesn't mean that you couldn't use a resource and then adjust from there. But part of what I think is the beauty of Pipeline is that I literally will spend my time when we get our mentors and then we get the list of fellows, and I'll be making calls and say, hey, I have this person, we don't have someone that's in this industry. Would you be willing to mentor? And it's very intentional. And I think with all of everything with AI, yes, we provide resources on like how to utilize AI, and it's certainly much more of a topic of conversation. But what I love is that it's still so hands-on. And again, I think when you're going after heart and community and fellowship, if we lean too heavy on AI and technology, we would miss the heart that makes it special.
Yeah, it's the people, right?
It is.
It's the people. We talk about organizations, we talk about programs, but it's the people, right?
Yeah.
And I think that'll always be the case.
And a little bit of a tangent, but before your next great question, I was saying to someone today how much, because of AI, I used to really enjoy LinkedIn because I love getting to hear the true heart of other entrepreneurs, other people in the ecosystem. And now, one, it's obvious when guys are texting and there's like little like rocket ship emojis and hearts.
Like that's the dead giveaway, right?
And also the double hyphens. Yes, the double hyphens. That even though it might start with their idea, it's clear that it's not authentic them.
Yeah.
And so there's this piece of like pushback that I have, and that doesn't mean that I don't have it help me when I'm trying to like just start on a thought. But when I don't even enjoy LinkedIn anymore because I'm like, yes, that is beautifully written, but it's not authentic. It's not real. And I don't ever want Pipeline to become that. I want Pipeline always to be this source of authenticity and truth and sacred space where you can put on a show for everyone else, your investors, your family, your co-founders, when you're like, no, everything's fine. Pipeline should be that sacred space where you can put those walls down and just be like, this is real. This is not easy. That, if we aren't careful to really like, not just embrace, but protect that, will completely go away. And that's where I'm like, AI aside, I'm starting to dislike LinkedIn now.
I gathered that. I picked that up.
Yeah. And that's the piece where I'm like, when I think about AI and all of the things that it can help us do, and it does, and it will, and there are technologies that will change the game in healthcare and everything else, it can also rob us of the deep connections that make us human and create the fellowship that's completely sacred to me.
It's almost like we didn't learn enough during the pandemic.
Did we not? Come on.
So
Yeah.
Serial founder to ecosystem builder again,
Yep.
kind of going on this, transition or this progression,
Yep.
I guess, in what you've done. What belief about startups, assumption or belief that you had, have you completely flipped or has changed for you?
I need to think about that. I didn't say, did you see? I caught
did. I
it.
saw it
You
coming
almost
up.
thought I was going to. I'm like, oh, what's completely flipped?
I mean, are there things as a founder you believe that as you started to engage with a broader ecosystem of founders that you found was just fundamentally different?
I think that serial entrepreneurs are different than regular entrepreneurs.
Sure. How so?
So when you think about someone who's like, I'm going to start a company, and then they hit it, something negative happens. Could be a co-founder embezzling money. Could be, all kinds of different things. When they are like, you know what, that was crazy, not what I expected, I'm not going to keep doing that. That's the same thing to do. Like, ooh, that was bad. I can have stability. I can have health insurance benefits, all these things if I, go have a regular job. Serial entrepreneurs are like, moth to the flame. They're like, oh, that didn't work. I have 5 other ideas of how I can do something else that will. And there is a creative genius in that where it's like there's a heart and a willingness to say failure's okay. And sometimes you look at it as like, oh gosh, there's a much easier path. And I love the fact that the serial entrepreneurs that we work with aren't that there may be an easier path, but I know I can figure this out. I know that I can create change. I know that I can disrupt something. I know I can figure this out. And if I fail, I'm going to get myself back up and start another company. And if I succeed, most people would be like, I'm done. That was great. I succeeded. Check that off the box. And instead, our entrepreneurs are like, okay, succeeded. So what's next? Let me start something else.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And the thing that I love about that I think is something that really always resonates with me when I'm talking specifically with investors, they're the literal backbone of the economy, not just regular founders, but serial entrepreneurs, because succeed or lose, they are constantly creating jobs and, raising capital and driving revenue for our region because they don't quit. They don't know quit. It's like, I will figure this out. I will bang my head against the wall 20 times, but I'll figure it out. And they do. And I think that's one of the beautiful stories of Pipeline is when you look at the overall success metrics of the entrepreneurs who have gone through our program, no, it's not the first time usually. And sometimes it's on the second time. But by the time they get to the third one, they're having successful exits because each time the cohort's helping them get better, the programming is helping them get better. And over time, they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that, tenacity and willingness to not quit is literally the backbone of our economy.
Yeah.
Who could not love them?
That learning mindset is so important.
I will
right?
be curious. I will figure it out. I will not be so stuck in my thoughts that I, can't shift and adjust to figure out how I could do this better.
I've been trying to frame the failure conversation differently. I've been trying to figure out what the Rubik's Cube of let's stop talking about fail fast or failures and so on, and trying to figure out how we position this. And one of the things it's always, I'm afraid to fail. It's like, well, then I feel like you're afraid to learn because the only way you're really going to learn is, when you trip, when you trip things up, when something doesn't work, because you're gonna have to figure out the next way to do it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's that serial entrepreneurship. That what's the next big problem? What's the thing? What did I learn from the last time that I'm going to take to the next time?
And what are these people that are around me that I trust going to also influence and rub off on me and be like, oh, well, what about this? Because that's the thing, we're industry agnostic. You're trying to solve a problem over here. There's someone else who could be in bio and you're in, fintech. But we're all problem solvers at a very basic level. And so when you have someone else who it's forest for the trees, they're looking at your problem from a completely different lens and seeing those moments happen in real life at the modules where someone from is like, oh, well, it's just that. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's the power of that, well, diversity in general. But, when you have that collaboration happening and you don't have that, sense of like competition, and it's like we're really all just digging in to solve everybody's problems together, it's so powerful. And so, yeah, one of our at one of our modules with our members, they were all in there, and it was like a packed house. It was like there were probably 50 members in there. And I remember we were talking about failure. And I said to the room, and you're talking about some of the most successful founders in the region that were in this room. And I said, who's never had a company fail in this room? And there was literally only one person in that packed room that hadn't had a company fail.
And that was their first company, probably.
Well, let's just say this person exited the same company twice. But literally, like, everyone else had failed and then gone on to do such incredible things. But if you stop at that part, you don't learn and you don't experience that. And so, yes, 100%. Like, it is the curiosity to not view failure as final and to get back up. And when you're surrounded by a room of people who feel the same way, it helps you feel like that's normal.
So I want to shift a little bit to your leadership. So having had the opportunity to work with startups that are developing like locally based ecosystems or marketplaces, and then watching them scale to a new city and watching them struggle, because cities are, every city is different. Every city has its own culture. Every city has its own resources. I mean, we have this conversation a lot, even in the innovation district space. Every innovation district is different because of those unique characteristics, qualities, and even cultures.
Yep.
You lead an organization that is across multiple states, that is defined by multiple major cities that all have very different cultures in ways. What have you done to calibrate your leadership to adjust to that in those markets, but maintain the overall vision of what Pipeline represents?
There's a couple things where I feel like I haven't been able to crack it. And so maybe we talk about like the curiosity on my part of the failure. So over my lunch meeting today, one of the conversations we were having was around St. Louis. And the question was, are you in St. Louis? Which we are. And we still have founders who come from there. And when I first started, we had more founders from there. And over time, you've seen that like trickle away, where it's like fewer and fewer. And other areas where there were less, like Omaha, that have really increased. And at first, I would have looked at that and been like, oh, it's a failure. Like, why aren't we cracking the code there? And I think being in the ecosystem, some of the things that I've realized is it's okay to not have a stronghold there. And sometimes it's for a season and sometimes it comes back. So for example, right now, St. Louis isn't an area that we see a lot of entrepreneurs coming from. There's so many dynamics that go into that. But I just remember wanting to, I just kept being like, no, we're not giving up on St. Louis. And then finally being willing to kind of like, okay, well, we're still here and we'll take people from there. But for whatever reason, there isn't this connection. I don't know why. People always say there's this thing between Kansas City and St. Louis, and there's this friction there and everything else. I don't know what it is, but I had to lean into, we don't have to have everywhere. We're in Kansas, all of Kansas. We're in Nebraska, all of Nebraska. We're in Missouri, all of Missouri. And each city will have seasons, and that's okay. And our goal and our job is to make sure that the entrepreneurs that we have coming from those cities accurately reflect who we are as an organization, because that's how we get the applicants that we get who continue that on for the next generation and the next seasons. And so as we get, right now, Omaha they have such a thriving ecosystem because they have money going into that ecosystem. And so you start realizing there are factors at play that you didn't realize when you started that you can't fight against, and you don't have to. It's like, okay, we'll still be here, St. Louis. We're here when you need us. But sometimes things, you just have to go with where there's a flow. And that's really hard when you're trying to make sure that you're covering every city, that every city is represented. At some point, I just had to be like, St. Louis, I love you, we're here, but it's okay. And not having to force things, because there are things going on at an ecosystem level that unless I lived in those cities, there's no way I could understand her now. And so I just have to be okay with it and rely on the founders that we do have there to be the ones to embrace the other people. So it's like you're sending them out to embrace those people and bring them in.
Yeah, at some point it's, hey, St. Louis, call me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always like, we're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're not done, But journey to date,
Yeah.
all the things we've talked about, what's the one thing you're most proud of and why?
The thing that I'm most proud of is who Pipeline is today and what it represents. It represents a beautiful community that is diverse in every sense and strong and supportive and caring. It is a community that is full of heart and is reflective of the communities that we serve. And the one thing when I started out, Pipeline needed to reflect the communities that it served, and it does now. And that needs to continue, and it needs to grow and expand. But that, being able to see that starting to be reflected and seeing our Pathfinder cohorts coming in and how quickly they're able to progress over the course of a year, and then seeing them through in the fellowship for that year, and then having membership be for life. That's one of the most beautiful things. And then the other thing was changing. We're still a startup. So we changed our business model around how we looked at membership. So when I started, there were membership fees. It was $5,000 to be a member. And it was one of the biggest complaints I got when I started, hands down. It was like everybody that I had met one time was calling and being like, so what are you going to do about the membership fees? They need to go away. And again, just like anything else, there was a purpose behind it. The goal of the membership fees was to have us not to have diversified revenue streams, to not be dependent on one organization. So 100% the right call. There needed to be membership fees. But what happened over time was that it became a limit to access. So if you are here as an organization and you're saying, we're here to support serial entrepreneurs, that's great, but if you then put in something, not intentionally, that is a barrier when those same entrepreneurs need you the most, which is when they can't afford that $5,000 membership fee, then what you're saying and what your actions are don't reflect, they don't match. And so I was fortunate to have a board at the time we made the change that was willing to back me to say, I think that if we changed our business model from being a membership fee to a donation, which accurately reflects when you have the money to be able to actually give back to Pipeline, and when you don't, hey, give what you can from what you've been given. If we make that change, we will see more money come in from donations than we saw with membership fees, and we will remove this piece that has created this friction layer of being able to be authentic to who we say we are.
Has that played out?
Yes. We have doubled in donations what we ever got in membership fees.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So it was the right bet.
Kudos. Yeah. Existing in different ecosystems, especially different states.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri. What's the policy difference around entrepreneurship, and what would if you could, Governor Vincent of the Heartland, if you were to be able to change policy or at least make some policies common across the Pipeline ecosystem, what would you look at, and what do you think are the most influential policies that truly affect entrepreneurship?
I mean, obviously, angel tax credit.
Yeah, kudos. Yeah, for sure.
Huge.
Are you listening, Missouri?
Yes.
Are you listening, Missouri?
Yes.
Yes.
That's one, but I also think that, there are ways, and I think that the state of Kansas is trying to become more entrepreneurially friendly in the way that they're providing support and what they're doing. And, again, if you think about entrepreneurs as the backbone to your economy, why are you not investing more in those entrepreneurs? Because they are, and the data around that's clear. So if the data is clear that is your backbone, there are ways that you can be investing in those startups, whether it's tax credits, whether it's like matching dollars. There's so many things that can be done that aren't being done. And it's state by state who's doing what. And so you see it's like, a little bit of this over here, if they brought that over here. And then, you have other areas. And I think the biggest thing is there's not, like when you think about entrepreneur support organizations like Pipeline, and there aren't that many of us because from a federal level, funding dollars have dried up. from a foundation level. Like when I look at thriving ecosystems that support entrepreneurs, that give them what they need to be able to flourish, there's always got to be a financial source that is funding those entrepreneurial support organizations. So when I look at, for example, I'm in Oklahoma. Oklahoma City does not have a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem, but if you look at Tulsa, there is. And Tulsa has the Kaiser.
We don't use that word in this space. We don't talk about that T word in this space.
Okay. Well, noted.
Just.
But what it is, it's a funding source, right? And so it's like that ability for states to recognize that you have to have a funding source that supports the entrepreneurs and supports the organizations that support the entrepreneurs, because that is what helps them thrive. It's more than just money. It's also the resources and access to network and to mentorship that entrepreneurial support organizations provide. And so when you don't have that at the federal level or the state level or at a foundation level, you have no ecosystem.
We had business leaders here last week from Global Ties. 22 countries were represented here. We got 4 of them up on stage. We had a special episode of the podcast, and I was amazed to hear the conversations about, it was validating in a way that, look, there's not a huge difference in terms of intelligence. There's not a huge difference in terms of problems. There's not a huge difference in terms of lived experience. The difference is access. Like the difference that makes entrepreneurs is access. So if you, again, Governor Vincent, were able to remove a barrier, talent, capital, policy, networks, what would be the one barrier that you would remove to improve entrepreneurship in the Midwest?
100% capital. I mean, I would say I would tie capital and network/mentorship together, because capital without wisdom will fail. Capital with support and resources will succeed. And again, maybe not the first time, but capital is a huge part of the issue, because there is a lack of early stage capital that allows you to kind of make those early failures and learn, and then it's a long play. And I think a lot of times when we think about capital, we have a very short play mindset versus a long play. And having that, if you added that piece, you have to tie it with the network, because without that, you're not going to be able to have the growth that makes the capital actually worth investing. So you have to have that access to, it could be other states, like a regional approach. It could be, looking at other countries, like that's something that, I know Craig's here with Endeavor, and that's something that they're really great at. I think the power is not looking at the other support organizations as threats or competitors and looking at them as, they're another piece of the puzzle that we need brought to the table. Oh, we need this piece. Like Pipeline plays this tiny little role. You need all the other organizations. And so I think when you have funding, it allows the organizations to not feel like there's a scarcity mindset, and it allows everyone to kind of work together and create that flow, which helps someone take that capital and utilize it in a way that helps them get further.
I just had this conversation today. We're talking about pre-seed investment. We're standing up this new angel network, and we're talking about how angels in the Midwest in particular avoid pre-seed investing. How are they, it's like, well, but we don't have good deal flow. It's like, well, how are they going to get from here to there
for you to have
without
deal
that? And we're talking angel investments that we're not talking about. We're not dropping millions of dollars on companies. We're dropping small amounts, but that's the only way we're going to get good founders from here to there in many instances. And to me, that access to capital barrier, it's a risk tolerance.
Yeah, I 100% agree
It's just a risk tolerance. It's not, there's plenty of money. And there's plenty of people who want to invest. It's just a mindset around what is the purpose of the investment in this phase.
Yep. So it's the long play. Again, you have to have the long view. If you don't have the long view, then you don't have the risk tolerance, because you're looking at it as like, what's my short-term gain from this? No, it's the long play.
Yeah, I got news for you. If you're an angel investor and you're thinking short-term gains, you're in the wrong
You're in the
group.
wrong space.
Yeah, you're in the wrong network. All right, last question. What's the dumbest thing you've ever done that people warned you wasn't going to work that actually turned out okay and worked?
Oh, man. The dumbest thing that someone warned me about.
And you can't say get married. That's not.
Gosh,
no.
well,
Somebody's
that's
used that
pretty,
one already.
Gosh, that's pretty dumb, though. It was for me.
Yeah,
That's same for everybody else. By all means.
Glass houses.
Yes, don't throw stones. The dumbest thing that someone warned me about the what?
That ended up working out.
It's going to be the same thing I said about the membership fees. When I started, I was told I could not touch those. And I was like, it wasn't like handed. I was just like, but what? I get it, but it doesn't align.
Yeah.
And so I pushed on that for several years before I was able to actually make that change. And so when that worked out and we doubled the number, I was just like,
yeah,
damn right it did. And, so it was that, but that was risky because it was like, if you're wrong on that, no one's ever going to pay a membership fee. If you remove them and then you're like, just kidding, we didn't get any donations, now you have to pay them again. You can't do that. You can't once that genie's out of the bottle, it's not going back in. And so it was like, if I'm wrong, we have completely cut off a revenue stream at a time where you don't really want to do that. And so it was seen at first as like, that is not going to be a good decision. And it was just the belief that I'm like, I know the generosity and spirit of the people that make up Pipeline. And I have to believe that when you are able to give, you will. And that when we're here for you, when you can't, that will pay off someday.
It's fascinating to me to hear you describe it as an opportunity to change access versus gain revenue, and the outcome being improving the access issue, but yet gaining the revenue. I think it's a great story. It's fun to be around mission-driven ecosystem leaders. It's always, it's tough work. It's hard work, right? And it's very different hard work than being a founder. So thank you for the leadership, the heart you've poured into the organization. I think the Midwest in general, Kansas City in particular, is better for it by far. So don't go anywhere. Keep doing what you're doing.
You're stuck with me now.
Yeah, no, perfect. And then, I want to get you back up here in a while and talk about how things are going and talk about how the new cohort's going and so on.
Always happy to do it. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Thanks a lot. Give her a hand, everybody.